I pushed the buttons, and the three baseball Michiganers are back. Golenbock University. I'm Ralph Tyko. We have Alan Blumkin, one of the Michiganers. Al, how are you, sir?
Okay.
And Peter Golenbock, the professor. How are you, Peter?
I'm just fine. Thank you, Ralph.
Good. We're talking off the air to our guest, and he's Gene Hutmaker, and two Yankee authors. Peter has his book on his bookshelf, as does Gene has Peter's on his bookshelf. And two Yankee authors who come at it from different perspective. Peter, we know Dynasty, epic book. Fewer people know about Band in the Bronx, the Yankee Hater Memoirs, 1953 to 2005. But Gene Hutmaker wrote an incredibly entertaining book that, although you're a Yankee hater, you never bash the Yankees in any way. At least you have a way of writing that doesn't make it sound like you're bashing the Yankees.
I'm realistic.
Right. They
Mickey Mantle's probably the second best I saw behind Willie Mays in all my time. Jeter's top shortstop of all time that I've seen. Whitey Ford's one of the best. I want Munson and Mattingly in the Hall of Fame. Even Guidry, I could see him in the Hall of Fame. And I just cannot stand. And I'm on Facebook a lot, combating people, and I'm always citing Jeter's 5 gold gloves that I hope goes on his Hall of Fame plaque because they're always citing his bad defense. And I didn't vote him to 5 gold gloves. The designated experts who do so did.
Well, I want Peter to speak on this and compare Jeter defensively to, say, Phil Rizzuto, and tell me if it's not somewhat the gold glove. It's almost become the best hitter. Hitting stats really fit into it. Am I right?
Several years ago, they gave Rafael Palmeiro a Golden Glove. They played 38 games at first base the entire season. They gave him a Golden Glove for that.
Well, he must have been really outstanding in the 38 games.
That's ridiculous.
Well, that's a clever way of saying that the system is flawed.
And he was still a good player, though. He still was not a bad fielder. So I don't really think a bad fielder ever really got a Gold Glove, except when the people cite Jeter.
Okay. Well, I wonder why they cite Jeter, and I also wonder why when they acquired him, and we've been over this before, I think they might have been better served to have Rodriguez play shortstop, who had much better range, and move Jeter over. I understand the King of New York and all that stuff, what it comes to, but if you were playing a sim game where you these games, computer game, where you recreate offense and defense statistics, I'd probably go for moving him over, although Rodriguez became a great third baseman as well. Mr. Golenbock, speak on Phil.
Yeah, I got cut off about 5 minutes ago. I'm back. And so you're asking me about Rodriguez versus Jeter?
No, basically,
I don't know. I don't think I can agree with you. Moving Jeter was just not going to happen. I mean, they made the deal knowing that Rodriguez is going to move. I mean, that was the deal. We'll take Rodriguez. You agree to play third base?
Made the deal? Did Rodriguez know that
when
they made the deal?
Yes.
I'm wondering.
Rodriguez absolutely knew that.
Okay.
He absolutely knew that when they made the deal. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, I mean, what I don't quite understand is why Alex didn't go to Boston. I mean, that's where he was supposed to go. And he would have been one of the great heroes of Boston history had he gone there. He'd have played shortstop. He'd have hit all those home runs. They'd have won a lot more pennants.
The union stopped
But for
that.
some reason, he didn't go.
The Players Association wouldn't allow him to take the cut and pay or something, whatever was the ramifications of it.
Very, very odd.
They put the kibosh on that.
Wow. That
Yeah.
was strong.
That certainly changed baseball history.
The strongest union in America history is the Players Union. You got to credit Marvin Miller. What a genius. There you go. But was it for the good of the game overall? That's a question. Has the game itself improved? What it's evolved to since, say, when we were kids or when we were covering it in the 50s and 60s to now. I'm curious what Al Blumkin, what you've seen it.
I've seen everything from 1951 on.
Okay. I have too, but I was too young in '51
I was 8 first year.
to put it together.
To follow New York baseball in 1951 between the Dodgers and Giants and the Yankees, you had everything going for you.
Right, in the 50s, absolutely. But how has the changes? Any of them been good? We're all somewhat traditionalists.
It's a very
but which ones have been good? Which ones have been bad?
The owners historically treated the players like dirt because the reserve clause, is basically it's un-American. If you want to call it, if that's not too strong a term. And the owners used to, in the 40s, somebody, during the war, somebody had a good year. They say, no, we're not giving you a raise because you'd be making $50 a month in the military. 30s, no, you're lucky you have a job. So the owners, essentially, the only time the owners ever gave money was when there's a challenge, like in 1901 when the American League challenged the National League, or in 1914 and 15 when the Federal League came in. Maybe when the Mexican League started to take players in the late 40s. That's the only time up till the free agent decision in 1975 that the players ever held the upper hand. And now, of course, it's turned the other way, but there's so much money coming in now that these owners wouldn't pay some of these players what they're paying them unless they could afford it.
Right. Even to this day, they wouldn't. Changes good and bad. Our guest, Gene Hutmaker, author of Band in the Bronx, The Yankee Hater Memoirs, 1953 to 2005. What do you say, Gene?
I'm for free agency with a salary cap and a salary bottom, or a payroll cap and a payroll bottom. I'm against the Yankees. And even before free agency, the Yankees always had the most money to have the most scouts, and they could pick up a Johnny Mize at the end of the career and pay him where other teams couldn't. But I'm for a payroll cap, just like they have in the other sports. That would level the playing field, so to speak.
They'll never go for a cap. I can't see
a bottom cap also. A bottom cap also. A fair one.
A fair one. Would you say that what the minimum wage today is would be a fair bottom cap?
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Is the tail wagging the dog? And how is that for the fan? I'm just curious. Is it better? Is all this change mostly around financial good, bad, and indifference? Bringing in big bucks with TV, everybody makes a profit. The owners are giving it away only because they're making more. They're still the owners. Or at least 50-50, say. How much are we talking about? how has that affected the fan, Peter, and for the good and for the bad?
Well, you were asking about how baseball compares today, to say how baseball compares in the 50s.
Same basic question.
Yeah. And there's actually no comparison. The baseball players today are so talented, A, are so much bigger in size, B, are such in better shape than the ball players of the 50s, C, that we're watching today the greatest ball players who ever played the game. You watch some of the defensive plays that they make, and you wonder, how can anybody be so athletic and acrobatic and talented so that they could jump so high and run so fast, and how an entire pitching staff can throw 95 miles an hour, every single one of these guys, and how, as happened with a game a few days ago, a batter could hit 100-mile-an-hour fastball for a home run. It just blows your mind how fabulous these athletes are today compared with the fairly, slower and more lumbering and less athletic guys of the 1950s, which isn't to say that they weren't incredibly talented ball players back then. They were, of course, but it was a different era. I mean, these ball players today are just such magnificent specimens who play the game at such a high level that, it's like going to the ballet and watching Baryshnikov. You just sit there with your mouth open at some of the plays that you see in the baseball game today. It's just amazing.
Right. But I guess what I'm talking about with the money, it's not reaching the kids that come out, the families that come out. They're not the ones that are appreciating the Baryshnikovs that are playing. I'm not doubting that they're more talented from that standpoint.
Well, baseball has a problem right now that is shared with football and basketball and hockey. And the problem is that the millennials, and these are the people who are between, say, the age of 15 and 35, they spend more time sitting with their little machines, their iPods and pads and those little square things that you sit on the bed and look at. They just, and they play video games. There are more kids playing video games than are playing baseball. I can tell you that. And it's a problem. Baseball, I have a friend who is an advisor to Major League Baseball. And he tells me that this is the very biggest problem that they have not been able to figure out how to solve. You go to baseball games now and you can hear rap music, which people the age of, say, 50 and up can't stand. But they play it because they want to appeal to the kids. They want to bring more kids to the games. The Tampa Bay Rays spent so much money helping the building ball fields around Tampa and St. Petersburg. They do so much for charity. It's really unbelievable. Their imprint in the community is huge. And, of course, they do it for all the right reasons, but they're also trying to attract, kids. And they're having a very, very hard time of it. Very, very hard time of it.
But you mentioned it's not just baseball, it's all sports that
that's right. That's exactly right. Yep.
Okay. What really affects, I'm involved with my town sports. I work in a high school with athletics, and what really does, like when I was a kid, you play baseball in the spring. Now there's spring soccer, there's spring lacrosse, and coaches are kind of selfish in the sense that, like, the basketball coach just wants the kid to do basketball year round. So baseball, back in the 50s, everybody did baseball. Now there's all these other things in addition to the electronics that they play.
Well,
that's absolutely true.
Prop 9 had a big effect, and this came into being in the early 90s. And in a way, when you think about it, it gives women sports validity, and it gives women a chance to exceed and excel in what they do, just as men do. But it's put a lot less money into the programs to develop. And I've always said that colleges, especially basketball and football, they're the minor leagues of sports, of the pros. So I think a lot less money has been channeled that way, and that's hurt.
But Proposition 9, which was, I believe, passed in 1972, was when Proposition 9 came along. It came along when nobody who passed it understood the ramifications of it. They had no idea how it was going to affect college sports. They had no idea. And in fact, after it became clear what the effect was, which is that the women athletes had to be on the same footing as the male athletes. There was, for a couple of years, I think under George W. Bush, they canceled Proposition 9 for a couple of years, if I'm not mistaken. But the thing that Proposition 9 did for all these sports, including baseball, especially baseball, is that so many young girls in high school and in college had the ability to play softball. Prior to Proposition 9, most of the women did not play sports. They just didn't play it. It wasn't available to them. Once Proposition 9 came into being, hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions, of women for the first time began playing high school and college sports. And the thing about baseball, what makes baseball so special, is if you played the game, you understand the game. And once you understand the game, you love the game. And so we've had many, many more female fans at baseball games because of Proposition 9.
Whoa. I was going to ask you, with your softball experience in St. Petersburg, in California we have a lot of mixed teams. So you'd have maybe 5 men and 4 women on a team.
Yep.
Do you have that in Florida too?
Absolutely. We certainly do.
Good.
By all means.
Good. I didn't know if that was.
They're called co-ed leagues, and they're less competitive than the men's leagues.
Okay.
The idea is recreation. I'm sorry?
No, I was just going to say it gives people a chance to play, even though they're not as competitive at a lesser level, and maybe is in it for the sociability or whatever, meeting people. I think that's cool as hell. I also think that you get a chance in your dotage, being a month older than me, to play competitively, and will probably until you drop over.
I figured one day I would cross home plate and drop dead. I figured that's
what a way to go! It's like
yeah, exactly.
Really, no one I can think of.
Well, this is going to be our league, our half-century league in St. Petersburg, which is for players between 49 and 74. This is going to be my 22nd season.
Wow. Holy Toledo. Now, do you see a development of players, say, 68-year-old guy wakes up and says, I want to take some instruction. I really want to get serious. I've been playing this for 4 years. I'm at a mediocre level. Do you see people really increasing their skill level at our age?
No. Absolutely not.
Okay.
No. Not at all. No. You come out to our league, and it's pretty clear you can either play the game or you can't. And when you can't, they usually spend, one morning, and then they go off to whatever league they came from. So no, you've got to know how to play in our league.
Okay. That answers my question. It's a tough, competitive league, in other words.
A tough competitive league. It truly is. What happens is that in the last couple of years, we've had young guys. We've had 12 fellas who are between the age of 49 and, say, 58 enter the league, and these guys can really play. So us older guys are feeling the squeeze because there are 4 teams of 11. And you want to make sure you're one of the 44 guys who play.
But when you came in, did people say the same thing about you guys coming in? You were younger when you came in. You were that age 22 years ago. When
I was younger at age 49, when you could join the league at age 49. When I joined at age 49, I didn't think in a million years that I would ever be 70. When you're 49, you say, well, okay, next year I'm going to be 50. That's about as far ahead as you can think.
Yeah.
And when you join the league at 49, what you want to make sure is that you can play well enough to stick. So you're not thinking of who you're pushing out. All you're thinking about is making the league, making the team.
Yeah, but my point is there was somebody reacting back then to you coming in as you react to them coming in, and that's just the way of it.
It's just the way.
Yeah. Did I lose everybody?
Yeah. No. That would be like some of these older players being jealous of Bryce Harper.
Right.
Some of these guys that are 38 being jealous of Bryce Harper.
Yeah, I think
let's talk about something. We had the best talent in baseball. I think you mentioned Bryce Harper. I think the kid in Los Angeles is just as good, if not better. He slides he slides head first, and he wrecks his thumb.
Trout.
What kind of craziness? What kind of craziness is that? And was Pete Rose back, Peter? We lost you.
Back. Yeah. I've been cut off 3 times already.
I don't know what that is.
I don't either. At any rate, let me just finish. Let me finish what I was saying before. Is that we keep the statistics. We keep your batting average. We keep how many runs you've scored, how many RBIs you've had, how many walks, that sort of thing. And it's the sort of league that if you're hitting, 158, you're going to say to yourself, I don't belong here.
Yeah,
that's how people winnow themselves and go and play in the co-ed leagues.
Yeah, they don't want to embarrass themselves, and that's cool.
Nobody wants to embarrass, right?
But then again, they gain a respect for what you guys are doing that they'll go to their graves with. They'll always remember and appreciate just how good you guys are.
No, I think these people leave with great resentment, quite frankly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Why? What do they have to resent? I'm curious.
Resent the fact that in a way they're being pushed out. They're not going to say to themselves it's my fault. They're going to say to themselves it's their fault. Human nature.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, that might have a lot to do with it.
I know. So you were asking about Pete Rose. What was the issue?
No, we're talking when we lost you. I mentioned the fact that I blank. What's the kid's name?
Mike Trout.
Mike Trout.
Mike Trout in Anaheim slides as good as any talent in baseball. Slides head first and wrecks his thumb, and he said, I'm not really going to push my rehab on this. Who could blame him? They're not winning with him, and they're not winning without him. Let him get as good as healthy as he can. That's not the point. The point is, who started the headfirst slide? Was it Pete Rose? And is that kind of craziness?
Now, Pete Rose knew what he was doing. As far as I know, he was never injured sliding head first.
Okay.
But, that kind of instinct, it's a bad proposition.
I don't know who started it. I mean, the reason they started doing it was the idea was you slide in and grab the bag with your hand. So you've got much, more control than just sliding your feet into the base. And if your foot pops up and you get tagged, then you're out. It seems to me that when you slide head first, you are really risking injury in all sorts of different ways.
Right.
Your hands are very important in baseball.
Coming down on you.
Oh, heavens!
Inadvertently,
right.
Somebody
can step on your hand with their spikes.
Right.
I mean, I've never quite understood it. I just never have. And when I taught Little League, I didn't allow my kids to slide head first. It just seemed too dangerous to me.
Yeah. To say nothing of coming down on your head, on one's head, if you're sliding head first, and an awkward play goes on, so an errant ball.
Well, I mean, theoretically, you could bash your head into the shortstop's knees and give yourself a concussion.
Absolutely.
That's what happened to Frank Robinson in 1967.
There you go. Exactly.
He had double vision. He crashed into Al Weiss, who was playing shortstop for the White Sox.
Very good.
And Robinson had double vision for the rest of that season.
And I guarantee you, he was not the only one.
No, I know that.
I just don't think it's a very good idea.
Right. Okay. It just occurred to me, and I wrote this down before, that we need to pay homage to Jimmy Piersall's passing earlier in the week, and Jim Bunning's passing earlier in the day, and Jim Bunning's passing within the last 2 weeks since we've been on. Let's start with Gene.
Yeah.
He was an American League player all those years when he was great, a Met kind of at the end. Memories of Jimmy Piersall, including the book, the movie, what stands out in your head?
Well, what stands out to me is 1961, he was making a run with Norm Cash for the 1961 batting title. And, Cash won 361, he hit 322. But in one of the games, he was playing at home, and he hit a ball through the third baseman's legs, and the home official scorer gave him a hit.
Whoa.
And that, it was like, wow.
Yeah.
But I remember, playing Tony Perkins and going backwards and so forth. And when I had the 1954 All-Star game, things you used to, with your finger, you used to spin it, and you had the cards with home run or out or double or everything. And Piersall was so good early in his career that they even had I remember they had a Piersall card. You had Stan Musial, Willie Mays, Jackie Robinson, and you even had Jimmy Piersall. That's how much they considered him back in 1954.
I saw him play a lot in 1953, which is first year back after the mental illness, and he was playing right field. They had a center fielder named Tom Umfoot, who they shipped to Washington after that season when they got Jackie Jensen. And Piersall was making all sorts of acrobatic catches in right field. And in several Yankee games, he took a number of base hits away from them, and even Stengel was impressed. And he really was a sensational outfielder as a fielder for quite a number of years. Of course, when they got Jackie Jensen and sent Umfoot to Washington, they put Piersall in center, where he stayed basically for the rest of his career.
Now, think about this outfield, gentlemen. As I know you know, Ted Williams in left, Jackie Jensen in right, and Jimmy Piersall in center.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to comment about the movie was terrible. Tony Perkins had absolutely no athletic ability. And the only thing that came out of that movie was a Hitchcock saw it and you saw Perkins twitching and doing whatever he's doing in that movie, and hired him for Psycho. The only thing that came out of that movie was it was not quite as bad as the William Bendix Babe Ruth movie, but it was. When I saw that, my jaw dropped.
The thing about Jimmy though was that he legitimately had a screw loose.
Oh yeah.
He was a little bit nutty. I was with him at a Cubs fantasy camp. This was around 1984, 1985, something like that. And each of the Cubs was assigned to coach one of the camper teams. Now, these campers were men and women between the age of, say, 30 and 70 who were wearing Cubs uniforms, who were paying $5,000 to spend the week with their childhood heroes. So on Piersall's team was this young lady. She was probably, say, 40, wearing a Cubs uniform, and she was assigned to play second base. So during this particular game, and Piersall's the manager of this team, one of the batters from the other team hits a ground ball that goes through this woman's legs. Jimmy Piersall. Now, Jimmy had to be, 70 years old then, something like that?
Oh, he was born in
50, probably.
Born in 1929.
When was he born?
Yes.
1929. He was 87.
Okay, so do the math for me. This was in 85. So how old is he?
He'd be
60?
54.
All right, 54.
56,
54.
Yeah.
56, okay. So he's 56 years old, and he comes tearing out of the dugout and gets nose to nose with this poor woman and starts screaming at her at the top of his lungs. You C-word. You. Just the worst horrible things that you could possibly imagine because he made an error on this play. And this poor woman burst into tears, and the rest of the people at the ballgame, they didn't know what to do. Jimmy was totally out of control. Eventually, one of the other ball players came over to him and walked him off. And in fact, they put him on a plane and sent him home. But this gives you an idea of just how unhinged this guy was throughout his life.
Well,
it was one of the worst things that I ever saw.
Al mentioned that the movie was bad, but the first scene that was so good, actually, with his father screaming at him. And
yes, well, the movie was bad because the guy who played him was not an athlete.
Perkins,
right.
Perkins was not an athlete. Perkins was this, sort of fey guy who was not an athlete. But if you ignore if you ignore his lack of athletic ability and only look at the psychological aspects of that movie, it was a very powerful movie. Because here's a guy who's in Major League Baseball who's I don't know whether he was bipolar. My guess he probably was. But he had serious mental illness, and he still managed to play Major League Baseball for 17 years. I thought that was the most amazing aspect of his career, that despite this terrible mental illness that Jimmy Piersall had, he still was such an athlete that he was able to play ball for 17 years.
I just wanted to complete the fact that he played center field on the 59 Cleveland team that had Minoso and Calavito around him as well. So that's two pretty good outfields that he played.
He was on the All-Star team twice, 54 and 56, if I remember correctly. So he was an All-Star, a legitimate star. It's just that by age 56, he hadn't become less nutty. I mean, he really let that poor woman have it.
Oh my God! I'll bet she ended up getting her money back and apologized.
No, she stayed. The other coaches the other coaches, most of them were members of the '69 Cubs. Really, really wonderful people. You know, your great third baseman. He was there. The great catcher. Yes. Yeah.
Hundley.
Yeah. Hundley ran the thing. It was Hundley's gig. Hundley ran it. And Santo was there, and he was wonderful. Santo was something of a character himself, by the way. I was sitting at the table with him. We were having dinner, and I mentioned Billy Martin. I don't know. Somehow Billy Martin came up, and it looked to me like Santo was going to come across the table and grab me by the throat.
He hated Billy Martin.
That's how much he hated. That's how much he hated Billy Martin.
My son went to that's $5,000 was a lot. My son got that as a wedding gift from his wife. He was 38 when he went down to the Yankee. But my sons are Yankee lovers, and he went to the Dynasty, and he did what Mike Torres couldn't do to Bucky Dunn. He struck Bucky Dunn out.
Isn't that great?
He was a great shortstop. My son in high school and everything.
Wow.
They had pictures. He was great. He had a great time. Johnny Blanchard telling stories and so forth. But he didn't tell him that his father wrote the book.
I see. I mean, the funny thing is that book isn't as hateful as it professes to be. It's really, in a way, it's kind of laudatory.
Not at all. Not at all. It gives great insight, and
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I have it. I read it when I was recuperating 2 years ago.
Nice.
I enjoy it, even though back in those days I was a big Yankee fan.
I want to do a sequel, but I risk a divorce of almost 50 years if I do it.
See, what you have to understand is that Yankee fans, quite frankly, are impervious to criticism. You know, you start criticizing the Yankees, it's very simple. All you go is 1949, 1950, 1951, 1952, 1953, 1955, 1956, 1957, 1958, 1960, 1961, 1962, 1963, 1964. Next.
14 of 16 years in the World Series.
That's exactly
in the American
right.
League.
Yep.
Right. And all anybody wants to say is, how come Casey didn't take out Kubek and put him in left and replace Yogi and DeMaestri would be a shortstop?
It hit a pebble.
Anyway.
It hit a pebble.
Somebody was calling for Joe DeMaestri to be the shortstop. Who was that?
To come in, as Casey would always do in 1960, and bring in Joe DeMaestri.
It didn't matter. The ball hit something.
It wasn't an error. World Series?
Yeah.
Yeah, the ball. That ball almost killed. It almost killed Kubek.
Yeah. No, it wasn't an error, but it was.
No, the ball hit a pebble and hit him in the throat.
Slightly positioned. Anyway, no, you can't say anything
listen to me.
About
since you're on the subject, Ralph, why didn't Casey Stengel start Whitey Ford in the first game in the 1960 World Series? That's what all the Yankee fans want to know, and that's why he got fired.
Because he wanted to start at Yankee Stadium.
Al will tell you this. He started at
12-9 that year.
Instead.
Missed a good portion of the season with arm trouble.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand. Casey was very clear as to why, but it's what cost him the World Series. Whitey was spectacular in the two games.
He and Jim Coates in the eighth inning, when he took that chance and brought in Jim Coates, who proceeded not to cover first base, and then fly Johnny Blanchard and throw a fastball to Al Smith. Because I spoke to Blanchard at a card show in 1987 at length on this. It was before it started, and he was the captain. And he says he went out and told Coates, because they knew where Al Smith was nothing but a fastball hitter, because he played in the American League the previous 5 years. And Coates shook off every breaking pitch that Blanchard called for. He wanted to throw a fastball, so he threw a fastball. Smith hit it over the wall.
Well, what's the coach number 3?
Ask you, were you a Pirate fan by then? Probably not.
Yeah.
You were. So you rooted the Pirates against your beloved Yankees.
That's the only time I've ever rooted against the Yankees in my life was in that World Series.
Okay.
And, I asked Dick Groat when I spoke to him in 1985 whether it would have meant as much if they beat the Indians or the White Sox, the Red Sox, or the Tigers, one of the other American League teams. He said no.
That's true.
That's interesting.
That's true. Yeah.
But wasn't Jim Coates the number 3 pitcher in run average that year for the American League?
Yeah, but
I think he had a good season.
Yeah,
they wanted Whitey Ford to start in Yankee Stadium where he was so dominant.
Yeah, it was.
Not that it makes sense.
Art Dittmar started.
Oh, Dittmar was number 3, I think. Yeah, Dittmar.
It was Dittmar. It was Dittmar who started.
Yeah,
Dittmar was number 3 in run average.
The 5th game, which the Pirates won also. Pirates, Harvey Haddix beat them in the 5th game.
All right, guys, time's up. This has been tremendous, as always. Gene, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Please keep coming back to the network.
Oh, yeah.
Will do.
Yeah, we like to have
you have different shows, and it's very cool. And, Peter, a formal invitation again from the folks at Needix from 48th Street, Vintage Sports from the Garden at Needix, which isn't there anymore. Join us on Tuesdays when you can, and we talk other sports that aren't just baseball, and you pick a topic and join us anytime you want.
I appreciate it. Thanks very much, Ralphie.
All right,
Take
my
care,
guys.
everybody.
Thank you. Be well, friends. And everybody out there, if you're having anywhere near as much fun listening to this stuff as Al, Peter, and I have doing it, then success. And we'll catch you next week. Keep on keeping on. Bye.
Bye,
everybody. Bye.